After the apocalypse, what value might these pretty rocks have? Is it worth investing in the effort, tools, material, and knowledge to collect semi-precious gemstones and rocks and make them shine? Could they be used in a barter scenario or even as currency? What other unusual barter currencies might make sense in a post-apocalyptic world? Before you dismiss the idea, give my video here a listen. Hear out all the possibilities, and let me know your thoughts. You might be surprised at what you hear. Hello, fellow mutants. Copper Mutant here again. I like to think about things that might be easy or inexpensive to come by today, but could be of more value in a future shtf scenario, especially one where digital currencies have become so pervasive that people literally have nothing worth trading as a currency replacement after the grid goes down. Clearly, in a post-collapse society, other resources such as food, water, medicine, tools, and weapons will initially be more highly valued and in higher demand than anything else, at least until everyone has what basics they need to survive. But at some point later, any surviving societies will gravitate towards some commonly agreed upon currency to be used for trade of goods for intangible things like labor, especially when all the cans of beanie weenies are gone. Naturally, since one of my hobbies is tumbling stones, it occurred to me that there's a history of some semi-precious stones being used as means of trade. Rock tumbling is of course not only about making average stones look nice, but you can get precious stones at very reasonable prices that can be tumbled into attractive specimens. Explore that a bit with me here. Before you dismiss anything out of hand that isn't either printed fiat or perhaps gold or silver as being currency, consider a couple of examples in history. When the Europeans first came to North America, they saw value in an item used in Native American trade and culture. Wampum, made from the shells of quahog clams and whelks, was used as a form of currency in many Native American societies. In fact, wampum was so valuable that it was even adopted as legal tender in some parts of established European colonies, including New York. The exchange rate for wampum was set at 8 white or 4 black wampum to 1 stuiver, which was a coin of the Netherlands, generally made of copper. It's important to note that wampum had a much deeper cultural significance for Native American tribes than simply as a form of currency. It was often used in ceremonies and as a symbol of peace and friendship, and wampum belts were used to record important historical events and agreements. Today, wampum is no longer legal tender currency, of course, but it remains as an important symbol of Native American heritage and identity and is still used in some traditional ceremonies and practices. Another example, in ancient China, jade was used as a form of currency and had a specific name, yubi, which means jade currency or jade coin. These jade coins were usually small and round and were often inscribed with characters or symbols that indicated their value and origin. The use of jade as a form of currency in ancient China dates back to at least the 6th century BC and continued through various dynasties until the Ming Dynasty in 1368 to 1644, when paper money became the dominant form of currency. Even after paper money became widely used, however, jade continued to be highly valued in Chinese culture, and it remained an important symbol of wealth, power, and status. So, where do random tumbled rocks come into this conversation? Well, they could have some value in a bartering system after societal collapse, but their value would likely depend on a variety of factors similar to those of wampum, such as their scarcity and perceived desirability, perhaps due to some significance to a local culture. Some of this could be regional. A good example of cultural significance in the Southwest United States would be turquoise, which in Native American culture has been considered a sacred stone for thousands of years. It's said to have healing properties that can help promote harmony and balance, and has been used in spiritual and ceremonial contexts, such as jewelry worn by tribal leaders or in offerings made to deities. You can often see it incorporated into jewelry today, and it is symbolic of the American Southwest and not limited to use by Native Americans. It has a striking appearance and, in my opinion, is a colorful stone that really stands out against a plain backdrop. Consider the post-apocalyptic dreary clothing, and one can see how it could quite literally shine. According to Navajo legend, after a prolonged period of drought, when rain finally falls on the parched land, it is said that tears of joy shed by the people are absorbed by the earth, and as a result, the tears are said to crystallize and to transform into turquoise. One thing that tumbled stones would have over any other items from a pre-apocalypse age is how they can be polished and repolished, since generally they retain the same features underneath the surface and all the way through, with some exceptions. Most pre-apocalypse items manufactured of plastic and rubber, like a Funko Pop figure, or cotton and cloth collectibles like Beanie Babies. These items will fade, crack, and discolor over time until their value is gone. Imagine a drab and dreary life of wearing dust-colored clothing from a bygone era, and someone offers you some shiny stones to add a dash of color to your life. Assuming I were to pursue this further, the question would be, of course, what kind of stones would be the most likely to have the most visual or cultural appeal and value in my area. In West Texas, turquoise might be a good pick due to the proximity to New Mexico, Arizona, and the Old Southwest. While West Texas is not as well known for turquoise as some other parts of the Southwest, it is still a region where the stone can be found and where it has cultural significance. Turquoise, however, is a relatively soft stone, with a Mohs hardness of 5 through 6, which means it can be scratched or damaged easily. Therefore, it is generally not recommended to use turquoise in a rotary tumbler, as the tumbling process can cause scratches, chips, or other damage to the stone. To polish turquoise, it is best to use other methods such as hand polishing or a vibratory tumbler, which can be gentler. That said, I already have 2 rotary-style tumblers, and I'm not sure I really need a third tumbler at this juncture, vibratory or not. So for me, I'd continue the search. Another good possible regional choice could be the plume agate. It's a type of agate that is characterized by its unique plume-like inclusions, which can resemble feathers, clouds, and ferns. Plume agate is found in several locations throughout West Texas, including Brewster, Jeff Davis, and Presidio counties. In particular, the area around Alpine, Texas is known for producing high-quality plume agate specimens. Question is, could it be suitable as a regional currency? And would it look good when tumbled? This is likely more of a long-term question, as in long after people have abandoned other currencies, decades after societal collapse. The question as to what works best regionally in your preps, of course, eventually will need to be answered by you. If you live near the ocean in Maine, perhaps mother of pearl is a better material to make for good barter. If you live in Michigan, a so-called glowing rock found on the shores of Lake Michigan is known as euperlite, type of rock that glows under ultraviolet light and was discovered by Eric Rintamaki, a resident of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, in 2017. Euperlite contains fluorescent sodalite mineral, which emits this orange glow under UV light. The rocks are primarily found on the shores of Lake Superior, but have also been found on the beaches of Lake Michigan. Euperlite has gained popularity among collectors and has inspired the creation of a new type of jewelry and art. Of course, having functioning UV lights well into the future in a post-apocalyptic society is a risky bet, but it is fun to imagine trade occurring in dark rooms or at night with assisted verification of authenticity by the beam of a dusty old UV flashlight. An argument against all of this is that the value of wampum, jade, and turquoise, while highly prized by their respective cultures, was and is subjective, and was eventually phased out as a currency where it was once accepted as one. If a different lens of subjectivity rules the day, then Anything culturally significant, even old coins of the United States, could retain or regain their value for barter, especially to a people who yearn for the good old days after an apocalyptic event. There would also be a natural scarcity of U.S. coins after a societal collapse due to them no longer being minted. Of course, this could be exacerbated by a move to a digital currency, pre-apocalypse, where people are asked to turn in all their fiat currency before it loses legal tender status. That said, the further away from intrinsic value a type of currency is, the more it relies on the trust of citizens and its ability to act as an IOU backed up by a government. For example, compare a silver dollar to a paper dollar and a Sacagawea dollar coin. Each has its own material composition, rarity, and desirability right now. That would all likely be flipped on its head if the U.S. government were to collapse and be unable to back up the paper. A silver dollar has obvious merits, and even the much maligned Sacagawea dollar at least has a pure copper core. But a paper dollar has little to no intrinsic value and would be of little use to anyone after a collapse. Also, I'd add that a newer form of currency is the more immediate and obvious appeal it would need to have after an apocalyptic event. Nearly all coins of nations until the last 100 years or so were made of some metal with basic value to it. The fictional depiction of a currency based on bottle caps in the Fallout video game series, for example, strikes me as more of a joke than a serious consideration, since there is too little useful material in the bottle cap, but at least there's some aluminum or steel. So-called fiat currencies like the paper dollar, no longer backed by gold, are better for banks and governments, notably for fractional reserve banking, than metal coins. For those who've not gone down the rabbit hole yet, fractional reserve banking is a system in which banks lend out more money than they actually have on hand. This system works better with paper money because it is easier to create more of it as needed. The advantage of currencies made of materials of intrinsic value is that they are usually portable and worth something in hand, even if there is no system to back them up. So you don't need to trust in your government to back up the value of what you hold in your hand. This is a big reason why I like copper bullion rounds so much, and this is also a reason why many people collect constitutional or so-called junk silver. Back to the stones. They have some intrinsic value for their beauty, while which subjective is hard to deny. A challenge with tumbled stones in barter, however, is that generally are all going to vary in weight and shape to some degree, unless you have the right material hardness and a process available of making nearly identically shaped beads or coins similar to the Chinese jade coins I mentioned earlier. With random sizes of rocks, you'd need some sort of scale to weigh them, as you would with gold nuggets, or another means to measure them for their value. One way around this would be to make cabochons from the stones, which, if you are not familiar, is a gem that is polished down for use in rings or amulets. Another clear use for tumbled stones would be in jewelry. One of my favorite stones, though I have yet to come across another quite like it, is a bumblebee jasper that I got very inexpensively from India a couple of years ago. To my eye, it looks just like the desert of West Texas, with mountains in the background of a sunset sky. Can you see it? Consider that I got this cabochon set into a ring for about $5 with shipping. Perhaps no one else saw what I did in it, which is where perceived or subjective value comes in, of course. I'm going to go out on a limb and make the statement that jewelry with natural stones might not be as popular today as it was in decades or centuries past, but I'd bet that some of that trend is due to the relatively recent rise of manufacturing techniques and fabrics that allow colorful and flashy items to be displayed in a way like jewelry. Think of how people are dressed around shopping malls. They wear and display things on their bodies, even if they think they aren't being particularly fashionable, because they've been numb to decades of seeing such designs. A colorful neon green monster truck t-shirt, for example, or the subtle display of a Lululemon mark on one's yoga pants. Therein is a display of personal taste or wealth. With post-apocalyptic hard times and the passing of decades, however, colorful baseball caps, t-shirts, and shoes would all fade with use and become the color of dust. How valuable, then, might a bright gemstone like a turquoise be if all it needs is the occasional cleaning and polish to bring back its intrinsic beauty, while modern fabrics, plastics, and paints continue to fade? A world of wearing animal pelts, precious metals, and colorful gemstones traded for their beauty and utility might not be too many decades off after the end of the world as we know it. There are many possibilities, of course, for alternative future currencies if you open your mind to them. Another one that comes to my mind is brass, as in brass casings for freedom seeds. Even reloading 22LR could have its value in a world without rule of law. Values could be determined by size and rarity of caliber, and amount of brass, which is a useful copper alloy in itself. Perhaps you have some ideas you'd like to share here. My goal is to get you thinking and talking about what items besides the commonly accepted ones like constitutional junk silver might make good barter in an uncertain tomorrow, yet are relatively easy to come by today and might intersect with a hobby that is also interesting and fun for you to learn or pass on to others, perhaps give away as gifts. I think even junk silver hounds would agree that silver in old US coins is not nearly as cheap or easy to collect as it once was, so it's always good to have alternatives. If you have other options for post-apocalyptic barter that you'd like to share in the comments here, I'd like to hear them. That is, if you want a little variety beyond stacking all those copper bullion rounds, beans, bandages, and freedom seeds. That's all I have for now, fellow mutants. Copper Mutant, signing out.